Welcome to the Occupational Safety Leadership Podcast, episode number 28, Safety Training Needs Assessment. This is part three of three. If you're just tuning in now, please go back to episode 26 and 27, where we also break down this six-part series, six-part process then on a safety training needs assessment. In today's episode, we're going to focus on step 4, 5, and 6 and kind of do a little wrap up then. So let's go ahead and get started. So just a very quick recap on the six-step process of a safety training needs assessment. Step 1, identify the safety hazards and risk. Step 2, identify the training needs. Step 3, determine the training objectives. Step 4, develop the training program. Step 5, implement the training program. And finally, step 6, evaluate. You always got to go back and evaluate afterwards to really understand, did you meet your training objectives, or did you just torture everybody and take in training that they didn't want to take anyway? So it's very rare that you find the person who specifically wants to take more safety training out there. So as safety professionals, we love it. We think it's awesome. But for me, I do find people every so often, but generally I just don't find those people too often. So um, in this episode, we'll sit down and we look at step 4, 5, and 6, and kind of wrap up the process. Then. So step 4, and we'll go over a couple of definitions. Step 4, develop the training program. So in this one, definition that works for me is develop the training program based on the training objectives. So we don't just give training for the sake of training. We look at the objectives and say, now we're ready to look at what we're going to do there. And this also involves the selecting of the appropriate training methods, materials, and we want to look at, are we going to do classroom, are we going to do hands-on, are we going to do computer-based training, just how are we really going to sit down and implement this. So I like a mixture of all three, so I'm not going to say that there's going to be a one size fits all out there. This is for you to figure out in your workplace what works for you. And many times we also have to look at the company culture out there. We just literally can't say we've decided that we're going to go against the company culture and do the following things, have a lot more hassle with buy-in. So we really want folks to buy into the program as opposed to they're fighting you every step of the way too. Step 5, we implement the training program. This is where we're going to go back and make sure that we're providing the employees with the necessary training, the resources, and support to successfully complete the training. Sounds kind of funny, but as part of this, we have to talk to supervisors and managers and vice presidents and all the rest because safety training just doesn't happen in a vacuum. It does take time and it does take money to go ahead and do. Everybody wants to do safety training. I haven't found a company yet that wants to take people off of the factory floor and do safety training. So we have to sit down. We're prepping for there's going to be a time where this person will not be on that machine because we need them to take this training, and whether that's a half an hour, whatever the interval that we set up then. So you have to go back and communicate exactly what the needs are. Um, in this, everybody wants to get it done, but nobody wants to spend the time and the money to get it done. So anything we can do to help our um, and I hate to say selling, to help our cause, will help out. And then finally, step 6, we want to go back and evaluate the training program. So we're going to look at effectiveness of the training program by measuring the learning outcomes and assessing employee feedback. It's really important to go and get that employee feedback. Um, I know that as a safety professional, when I ask certain employees, no matter what I ask them, it's going to be rosy and it's going to be great and there's nothing wrong. But I also know that I have people out there who are 100% honest And I can go ask them, and they will tell me the honest answer. Might be an answer that I don't want to hear, of course. You know, I might not want to hear, oh, I did the computer-based training, and not that it wasn't good, but it only applied to about half of my job. So we need to go back. We've got to get that input. We've got to get that feedback from people. How do we make it better? We just can't do training for the sake of training. Just like if every time you went to the doctor said, oh, you just need to take this pill and you're better. That's just not happening out there. And of course, we want to look at how do we not. We want to look at the effectiveness. We want to look at the improvement process out there, and it has to be relevant still. So we like to think that our workplaces are kind of stationary, and the hazards are going to be the hazards, and that's it. But over time, people are changing processes, introducing different chemicals. Sometimes they're introducing more toxic. Most of the time it's least hazardous, it's less toxic and everything. So we want to look at, is everything relevant out there in the workplace then still? So let's do a little wrap up and then call it good on our safety training needs assessment. So just to wrap up the 6-step process. So we identified the safety hazards and risks. And a lot of this is we do this by looking at the records, accidents and injuries, of course, and just your old fashioned, I'm walking around the floor. I'm just walking around and I'm looking, I see a pinch point. There's a lockout tagout that has to be done. I might have confined spaces. Just a literal walkthrough of the workplace really helps out a lot too. Then we identify the training needs. Then we look at determining the objectives. You got to have your baseline to know where you're going to go then. So step 4, develop the training program. Step 5, we have to implement the training program. A lot of people have a hard time with step 5 because they've done all this stuff in a vacuum. Maybe talk to a couple of folks, of course, but now when it really comes down to it, we got to get that time, we got to get that money. You have to get supervisors on board and everything. So I really try and as I'm thinking about how I'm going to go back and implement this, I really try and work with the supervisors and managers as much as possible. And I like to take them on my walkthroughs also, so that it's just not something that they think that I dreamt up, that is something that is a hazard, that's not a hazard out there. So it also helps them to understand that this is exactly where this program is coming from too. And then finally, step 6, evaluate the training program out there. Is it relevant? Is it meeting everybody's needs? Is it that it meets everybody's needs, but possibly there's a little extra out there, right? If we're doing classroom stuff, it's really easy to take off that extra stuff that's not going to apply to our workplace, but maybe we're doing a computer-based training class, and it meets all of our needs, but there might be one or two things that don't meet our needs. Sometimes you're kind of stuck with what you're stuck with, and I wish I could say that we had the time and the money to go back and make our own computer-based training program and our own internal stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's already out there. The cost effectiveness is there. You have to evaluate it and make sure it meets your needs out there. A lot of companies, a lot of companies. And that's it for the 6-step training process. So please don't think that this is the end all be all. Modify these 6 steps for what works for you in your workplace. And that's it, episode number 28. This was part 3 of a 3-part series on safety training needs assessment. My name is Dr. David Ayers. Have a safe day.